Hello, and welcome to Around the Political World with John Rothman. I am your host, John Rothman. If you're a fan of the show, make sure to hit the follow button on the top right of Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you are listening at this very moment. When you hit follow, leave a review or share an episode with a friend. It helps other people discover the show and, frankly, expands our base, keeps us going. It does everything that we need. I want to speak with you today about a very serious matter. A president of the United States exercising the arrogance of power to the ultimate nth. Let's be clear. Donald Trump is using executive power in a most disturbing way. First of all, can you imagine that yesterday he signed an executive order dealing with flag burning, ignoring the fact that the United States Supreme Court has ruled that flag burning is constitutional? Can you imagine, for the first time in the history of the Fed, the President of the United States choosing to fire a member of the Fed without any grounds dealing with the Fed? Absolutely, there are accusations about the question of mortgage rates in her own situation. But the idea that she can be fired in this fashion is absolutely absurd. And of course, you now have the President of the United States who wants the National Guard to be organized in such a fashion that it actually would give him more power to put National Guard in the streets of the cities of America. There is no doubt that when last week the President authorized the break-in, and I'm going to put it just that way, of John Bolton's home and office, the former national security advisor to the President of the United States. And Donald Trump is out for revenge. What is more disturbing is that he denies he knew anything about it. Oh no, I read about it in the newspaper. Give me a break. You and I know better than that. This is a president who is, with arrogance of power, is doing things to American democracy that are unprecedented and, frankly, must be stopped. Now, the question is, who will stop this president and his abuse of power? And the question becomes, will the courts do it? It appears now that there is a battle between the Supreme Court and the lower courts. That's right. We are actually told that lower courts should stay out of the questions that are being posed now, that it's not their business. I want you to understand very clearly that when Pam Bondi suggests that, it is absolutely absurd for an Attorney General of the United States to make a statement like that. In fact, I would even go so far as to say that Pam Bondi and the Justice Department, as it is constituted by this president, are abusing powers in an unprecedented fashion. This would have been unthinkable until the advent of Donald Trump. Let me say a word about how he succeeds. Bullying and what I will term for you a dark charisma. It is a charisma that he possesses that no doubt has influenced a broad variety of people in this country who represent his base. But this dark charisma is doing tremendous damage to the American system. And we need to have a vehicle to stop it. Clearly, the Republicans in Congress are not going to stand up. And clearly, the courts, at least the United States Supreme Court, is reluctant to take on this president. And yet, we are in an alert, a red alert, against an attack on our democratic system. Can you imagine a president of the United States being able to deploy troops into major American cities? Can you imagine a president of the United States of America who is ruling by executive order, by fiat, and expects that what he says is more important than the law of the land? This is exemplified in the burning of the flag decision. The Supreme Court made a ruling. And when the Supreme Court speaks, even when we disagree with the Supreme Court, there is a general acceptance. We saw that in the Bush v. Gore case, and we have seen it subsequently in Roe v. Wade. Even though we may have substantial disagreements with what the court does, the court has been the final arbiter. And now let me point out that when Donald Trump attempts to criminalize flag burning by executive order, essentially overruling the United States Supreme Court, well, it is an arrogance of power unprecedented in American history. And that applies equally to President Trump's decision to fire a sitting member of the Fed. There is no precedent for that. It has never happened since 1913, when the Fed was established. Has presidential power been used, or I should make that attempted to be used, in this fashion? Who will stop Donald Trump? And he must be stopped. This is, by any stretch of the imagination, an enterprise doing such tremendous damage to the American system that we dare not be silent. Now, I simply have a podcast, but I hope that all of you will send this podcast wherever you can. I hope that people will understand I am not an alarmist. My goal is not to disturb the process of a president of the United States in executing the duties of his office, but it is every American's responsibility, contrary to what Stephen Miller has suggested, that if the president does it, we should simply be silent and agree. I agree with Theodore Roosevelt, who said that silence is acquiescence, that silence about the executive power of a president undermines the American system. These are not easy words for me to say. And I repeat, I am not an alarmist, but what is happening now is alarming. I will be speaking later on the Voice of San Francisco about what the president is suggesting about taking over 2 cities in Northern California. We are talking about San Francisco and Oakland. These are not idle threats. This is an attempt by a president to subvert the system. And may I say, if this president succeeds, we will have a serious problem on our hands, the future of American democracy. When the court reconvenes in October, it will have to act, and I hope quickly. And when we organize for the 2024 congressional elections, 2026 congressional elections, we had best be smart enough to understand that if Donald Trump and the Republicans continue along this path, I have not even mentioned the question of redistricting, the question of what is happening in Texas and what may happen in California, the subversion, if you will, of our system of balance of power, legislative, judicial, and executive, the attempts being made in Texas, and I will point out in California, as a counterbalance, subvert the American system in terms of a legislative responsibility. I could explain gerrymandering in great detail. I shall spare you that now, but I will tell you that these fights continue every single day, and I have not mentioned the question of immigration. I have not mentioned, I could go on, but I won't because I limit myself in terms of time. But please be aware that we intend to deal with these questions, and we hope you spread the word about the fact that we are doing it. And I hope, if you agree with us, that you will assist in that noble enterprise. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Around the Political World with John Rothman. I am John Rothman. Make sure to follow along and let me know your thoughts on the show by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts and sharing an episode with a friend or colleague, as I pointed out, so we can continue to grow and expand. I want to say that you can interact with me on Facebook, you can interact with me on LinkedIn, you can interact with me by contacting me directly. And of course, my special appreciation to Go-Go Zoger, the wonderful producer of this podcast, who makes sure we are up and running every single day. I am John Rothman. I'll be back tomorrow, right here on Around the Political World with John Rothman. See you then.